Good day, shipmates. We're starting the new unit. Actually, we've already started the new unit. That's what your previous test was over. The role of government and your responsibilities with government. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to talk about some of the source documents that we have in the United States, and these are things such as the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. This one today is on the Constitution and Bill of Rights, so we'll go ahead and discuss that. The terminal objective is understand the Constitution with the Bill of Rights and the other amendments. Explain the United States Constitution and describe the Bill of Rights. These are our two enabling objectives. That's going to be the subject of this PowerPoint. Posterity, some of the key terms that we have. Posterity is future generations. So they establish the Constitution for ourselves and our posterity. Autonomy is the quality or state of being self-governing. To ratify means to formally confirm or approve as of a treaty or a constitutional amendment. Amendment is a formal alteration to a document such as a constitution or a law. Or a contract. We amend contracts all the time, but particularly in light of this lecture, we're going to be talking about amending the U.S. Constitution. Quartering is providing living quarters for soldiers. Okay. The preamble outlines specific objectives to form a more perfect union. In other words, we didn't like the Articles of Confederation, so we decided to make it better. So we want to make a more perfect union. We want to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility or peace. We want domestic peace. Provide for common defense. Prior to that, we didn't. With the states and the states all had to be unanimous if they were going to go to war, and that didn't work. It didn't work well at all, because if it didn't meet the needs of the state involved, they weren't going to go to war over it. So promote general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Promote general welfare does not mean what we think of when we think of welfare. We're talking, that when we think of welfare, we're thinking of the laws enacted in the 1960s that gave people checks who didn't have jobs and that kind of thing. But this is just the overall well-being of the United States. So, okay, Articles of the Constitution. Article 1 outlines the legislative branch. Legislative branch is the Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. Section 1 vests the legislative power. It establishes it. Section 2 establishes House of Representatives. Section 3 establishes the Senate. Section 4 is elections of senators and representatives, and Section 5 the rule of the House and the Senate, rules of the House and the Senate. So, which is their basic operating rules. Section 6 is compensation or privileges of members, and they are compensated. They'll make sure that they vote on it. To give themselves a pay raise whenever they get a chance. Section 7 is the passage of bills, how bills are passed and enacted. Section 8 is the scope of legislative power, which is power to declare war, raise and support armies, provide and maintain a navy, make rules for the forces. Limits on legislative power comes from Section 9, and the limits on states is Section 2. Section 2 outlines the executive branch over the White House. All right, Section 1 is the election, installation, or removal of a president. Section 2 is presidential power, commander-in-chief of all armed services. Section 3 is State of the Union, receive ambassadors, laws faithfully executed, commission officers, that type of thing. The president cannot enter into a treaty without an international treaty without approval from the Senate, and they'll attempt to, but it's not legally ratified unless it's been approved by the Senate. And Section 4 covers impeachment. Article 3 outlines the judicial branch. Section 1 covers the judicial power. It establishes the judicial power. Section 2 shows the scope of the judicial power, and Section 3 is how treason is handled. All right, Article 4 outlines the relationship between states and the federal government. Section 1 gives full faith and credit. In other words, when the Constitution was originally written, the states were given a whole lot more freedom to run things in their own states that than they do now. I once had it was a friendly debate one time over pizza with a fellow who believed that every state should follow the same rules, and I said, well, every state's different. I said it has different people in it, and they all have different priorities, things that are important to them and not others. And he conceded my point. Section 2 covers the privileges and immunities, extradition, fugitive slaves, and of course there's an amendment that outlawed slavery later. And then Section 3 is how do we admit new states. Section 4 guarantees autonomy. An amendment requires both 2/3 majority from both chambers of Congress, and it has to have consent of 3/4 of the states. 3/4 of the states have to, their legislatures have to vote on these. Article 6 outlines the legal statutes of the Constitution, provides for adoption of all previous federal government debts, and provides or proclaims Constitution to be the supreme law of the land. Adoption of all previous federal government debts. In other words, we had bills to pay. We had borrowed money for the American Revolution, and then also too we were borrowing money too to build ships for the Tripolitan War, the Barbary Pirates War. All right, Article 7 describes how the Constitution is adopted. But by July 1788, the Constitution had been ratified by a majority of the states and officially became the law of the United States. Some states would not ratify the Constitution without a Bill of Rights. With ratification in jeopardy, framers of the Constitution promised a Bill of Rights after ratification, and that is so unusual. We would not get that today. There's people, even our legislature, our Congress, if they change their minds, they may promise something, but if they change their minds, they'll change their mind and they'll do it. I mean, you can look at how at the Affordable Care Act that was enacted back over 10 years ago. Gosh, I want to say it was probably about a dozen years ago, and anyway, they said we have to pass the bill in order to see what's inside it. And man, would you ever sign a contract that you didn't know what was inside it? Especially when it meant that it was going to spend a bunch of your money and give it to other people. So Congress added the first 10 amendments to the Constitution in 1791. It later became known as the Bill of Rights. It defines the citizens' rights and outlines the limits of the state and federal governments on citizens. The fundamental reach of influence. The Constitution covers large institutional matters, and the Bill of Rights covers ordinary individual lives. So the Bill of Rights allows you to have freedom of conscience, to not be, so your house isn't raided just at the will of the government. So, all right, Bill of Rights ensures personal freedom to worship and peaceably assemble, and the speech and the press, freedom of speech, and also freedom of the press. Gives personal legal rights against search and seizure. It protects you against self-incrimination, and it gives you the right to a lawyer.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Gives the freedom of religion, the right to exercise one's own religion or no religion, free from any government influence. All right. When we say, we have to be careful here. It says free from any government influence. What that means is that the government cannot establish a religion. Okay, they cannot say this is the official religion of the United States. That's called the Establishment Clause, and that's what that means. But freedom of religion has been so stretched out of shape that people think that the government, that nobody in the government can have religious paraphernalia on, or have they take crosses from the chapels on army bases and Air Force bases and things like that. So it just is an establishment clause. It just means that the government cannot establish a religion, an official religion. Freedom of speech. Even unpopular expression is protected from government suppression of or censorship. All right. The thing is, though, is that with every freedom we have responsibilities. We've got to be responsible with the things that we say. Okay. Freedom of the press gives citizens the right to print or publish truthful thoughts, ideas, or opinions. Okay. Oliver Wendell Holmes said freedom of religion, speech, and the press comes with the responsibility to not present a clear and present danger to the public. Each citizen must exercise his or her freedoms responsibly.
A well-regulated militia being
gives
necessary
the
to
right
the
to bear
security
arms.
of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
So it's the right to bear arms allows citizens to own weapons. This was for the protection of the citizens against their government, as well as against domestic enemies.
No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law.
They would set up a garrison in the colonies, and they would quarter soldiers in people's homes. They would kick people out of their own homes to quarter soldiers. Citizens cannot be forced to house or quarter soldiers in their homes during peacetime. However, during wartime, soldiers can be quartered in private homes as prescribed by law. So,
the right of the people to be
Fourth
secure
Amendment
in
is
their
against
persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
The right to be free of unwarranted and unwanted government intrusion into one's personal and private affairs, papers, and possessions. So there has to be a probable cause for them to search your stuff without a warrant, and it's usually probable cause usually comes from an arrest of for another infraction. Usually, if there's another infraction, let's say a person is speeding and they get pulled over, and the policeman goes up to the door and they lower the window, and then the smell of weed comes wafting out of the car. Well, that's probable cause for them to search the car without a warrant. Police may search only after obtaining a warrant from a judge. This is everyday work for police, courts, and lawyers. Okay. All right. And that gives us the first few amendments of the Bill of Rights and what you are entitled to as a citizen.